The Velthy ship floated in the darkness of space like a silver leaf. It was called the Silent Observer, and it had earned that name over many years. The Velthy were watchers. They studied other species before those species even knew they existed. This was their way. This was how they had survived for thousands of years. Commander Oris stood at the center of the bridge. She was tall, even for a Velthy. Her skin was pale blue, and she had 4 eyes arranged in a diamond pattern on her face. 2 eyes watched the main screen. 2 eyes watched her crew. She trusted no one completely. Trust was a weakness in space. "Commander," said Technician Brel from his station. He was young, barely past his training years. His hands moved nervously over the controls. "We have detected something." Oris walked toward him slowly. Her feet made no sound on the metal floor. "Show me." The screen changed. A small dot appeared against the blackness. It was moving slowly near a gas giant, a massive planet of swirling orange and red clouds. The dot was a ship, an unknown ship. "Origin?" Oris asked. "Unknown, Commander. The design matches nothing in our records." Oris felt something stir in her chest. It was not fear. The Velthy did not feel fear. It was interest, strong interest. They had not found a new species in over 200 years. The galaxy had seemed empty, conquered, mapped completely. But here was something new. "Begin full scan," she ordered. "I want to know everything about that vessel. Size, weapons, power source, everything." Brel nodded and began working. The Silent Observer had the best scanning technology in the Velthy fleet. It could read the temperature of a single room on a ship from thousands of kilometers away. It could count the number of beings inside a vessel. It could detect weapons, fuel, food supplies, and water. The scan took several minutes. Oris waited patiently. She had learned patience long ago. Rushing led to mistakes. Mistakes led to death. "Commander," Brel said finally. His voice sounded strange. "The scan is complete." "Report." Brel turned to look at her. His 4 eyes were wide. "The vessel is small, approximately 1/3 the size of our ship. It appears to be a patrol vessel or light warship." "Weapons?" "Yes, many weapons. But Commander—" He stopped speaking. Oris narrowed her upper eyes. "Continue, Technician." "The readings are unusual. I have never seen anything like this. The ship's hull is made of metals we recognize, but the way they are arranged is strange. The power source is—" He checked his instruments again. "The power source appears to be a controlled nuclear reaction." Oris felt her body go still. Nuclear power was old technology. The Velthy had abandoned it centuries ago because it was dangerous and dirty. Only primitive species used such things. But if this species had reached the stars with nuclear power, they had done something the Velthy considered impossible. "Show me the vessel's markings," Oris commanded. The screen zoomed in on the ship's hull. Strange symbols appeared. They were angular and precise. Brel ran them through the translation system, but the system found no match. However, it could read the basic shapes. The symbols translate roughly to Republic of Korea Space Force. The ship's name appears to be Indomitable. "Indomitable," Oris repeated. She did not know the word, but something about the sound of it made her uncomfortable. "What does it mean?" Brel checked. The closest meaning in our language would be, "cannot be conquered, cannot be defeated." A long silence filled the bridge. The other crew members had stopped their work. They were all watching the screen now, looking at the small ship floating alone in the darkness. "They named their ship Cannot Be Defeated," one officer whispered. "What kind of species does that?" Oris raised one hand, and silence returned. "We do not make judgments based on names. We make judgments based on facts." "Brel, scan the crew. I want to know what species we are dealing with." Brel turned back to his station. His hands were shaking slightly now. He began the biological scan. The Silent Observer reached out with invisible waves of energy. passing through the hull of the unknown ship, reading the life forms inside. The data began to appear on screen. Oris watched it carefully. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The crew was made of biological beings. They had 2 arms, 2 legs, 1 head. They were carbon-based. They breathed a gas mixture. Then the detailed readings arrived. Brel made a sound that Oris had never heard from a Velthi before. It was almost a gasp, almost a cry. His hands pulled back from the controls as if they had burned him. "This cannot be correct," he said. "Commander, these readings cannot be correct." "Explain," she said. "The atmosphere inside that ship, it is 21% oxygen." Oris felt her blood turn cold. Oxygen was a dangerous gas. It caused fire, it caused rust, it destroyed organic tissue. Only the most extreme life forms could survive in oxygen-rich environments. "There must be an error," she said. "Run the scan again." Brel ran the scan again. The results were the same. He ran it a 3rd time, a 4th time. Each time the same impossible numbers appeared. "Commander," Brel said quietly, "they are breathing poison. They are breathing a gas that would kill us in seconds, and they are walking around their ship as if it is nothing." Oris stared at the screen. The small ship continued to float peacefully near the gas giant. It looked simple, but the data told a different story. She thought about the Velthi protocols. When they found a new species, they studied it. They learned its weaknesses. Then, if it was a threat, they destroyed it before it could grow strong. This had kept the Velthi safe for thousands of years. But this species breathed fire gas. This species used nuclear power to cross the stars. This species, named their ships, cannot be defeated. Oris turned to her communications officer. "Send a message to Admiral Kova. Tell her we have found something. Tell her to bring the fleet." Then she turned back to Brel. "Continue scanning. I want to know everything about these creatures. Their biology, their weapons, their history, everything." Brel nodded weakly. "Yes, Commander." Oris watched the small ship on the screen. She had commanded the Silent Observer for 30 years. She had seen many species. She had helped destroy some of them. She had never felt worried. But now, looking at that tiny vessel floating in the darkness, Commander Oris felt something she had not felt since she was a child. She felt uncertain. And for a Velthi commander, uncertainty was the first step toward fear. Captain Tae Woo Jin sat in his chair on the bridge of the Indomitable. He was 43 years old. His hair was turning gray at the sides, and there were lines around his eyes from years of staring at screens and stars. He held a cup of coffee in his hand. The coffee was cold now, but he did not notice. "Sir," said Ensign Dae Sung-ho from the communication station. He was the youngest member of the crew, only 24 years old. This was his first mission in deep space. "The alien vessel is still scanning us." "I know," Woo Jin said calmly. "Should we do something, sir? Should we move? Should we contact them?" Woo Jin took a sip of his cold coffee. "No, let them look." Lieutenant Hana Park turned from her tactical station. She was 31, sharp-featured, with quick eyes that missed nothing. "Captain, I recommend battle stations. Standard first contact protocol." "Not yet," Woo Jin said. "I want them to understand us first. I want them to see what we are." Park frowned, but said nothing more. She trusted the captain. He had led them through 3 dangerous situations already. He knew what he was doing. On the Silent Observer, Technician Brel continued his scans. His commander stood behind him, watching every piece of data that appeared. The biological analysis was complete now, and it painted a picture that made no sense. "Report," Commander Oris ordered. "Tell me everything." Brel swallowed hard. "The species appears to be called humans. They come from a planet called Earth. The planet is a Class 4 world." Oris hissed softly. Class 4 worlds were dangerous places. They had extreme temperatures, violent weather, and often poisonous atmospheres. Most intelligent species evolved on Class 1 or Class 2 worlds, where conditions were mild and safe. "Continue," she said. "Their biology is remarkable, Commander. They are endurance predators." "Explain that term." Brel pulled up an image on the screen. It showed a creature with 4 legs running across a flat plain. Behind it, in the distance, a human figure followed on 2 legs. When they hunt, they do not ambush their prey like normal predators. They do not use traps or poison. They simply follow their prey. They walk after it. For hours, for days, until the prey becomes tired and cannot run anymore. Then they kill it. Oris stared at the image. In Velthi mythology, there were monsters that did this. Creatures from nightmares that followed you no matter how far you ran. The Velthi had thought these were just stories to frighten children. These humans had made the nightmare real. "What else?" Oris asked. "Their healing ability is beyond anything in our records. They can break their bones and survive. The bones actually repair themselves over time. They grow back together. That is impossible. I have confirmed it 3 times, Commander. Additionally, their skin regenerates after injury. Cuts, burns, even deep wounds can heal completely. It takes time, but they recover from injuries that would kill most species." Brel paused and looked at his commander. He seemed afraid to continue. "There is more," Oris said. It was not a question. "Yes, their bodies produce combat chemicals." "Combat chemicals?" "When threatened, their bodies release a substance into their blood. This substance makes them faster, stronger, and more resistant to pain. It happens automatically. They do not choose it. Their bodies simply prepare them for violence whenever violence is near." Oris was silent for a long moment. She looked at the screen, at the small human ship floating peacefully in space. Inside that ship were creatures that breathed poison, healed from terrible wounds, and could trigger chemical enhancement at will. "What about their senses?" she asked. "Mixed results, Commander. Their hearing and smell are average, but their eyes are remarkable. They can see a wide range of light frequencies. They can also focus on distant objects with high accuracy. They evolved as pursuit hunters, remember? They needed to track prey across great distances." On the Indomitable, Dr. Yuna Kim walked onto the bridge. She was the ship's medical officer, a small woman with gentle hands and a calm voice. She carried a tablet showing crew health data. "Captain," she said, "crew's stress levels are elevated, but within acceptable range. Several crew members are showing increased heart rates and adrenaline production, but this is normal given the situation." Wu Jin nodded. "Thank you, Doctor. Keep monitoring." "Should I prepare the medical bay?" "In case of emergency." "Always a good idea." Lieutenant Park leaned closer to the captain. "Sir, they have been scanning us for over an hour. They know everything about us by now. Our weapons, our crew, our capabilities." "Yes," Wu Jin agreed. "And we know nothing about them." "We know one thing, Lieutenant. They have not attacked. A hostile force would have fired by now. They are curious, maybe afraid." He smiled slightly. "Let us show them there is nothing to fear and everything to respect." Back on the Silent Observer, Commander Oris had finished reading the biological report. Her 4 eyes moved across the screen again and again, checking the data, hoping to find an error. There was no error. "Commander," Brel said quietly, "there is one more thing. I detected something in their blood that I do not understand." "What is it?" "A chemical signature I cannot identify. It appears in trace amounts in all crew members. When I cross-referenced it with their historical records." He trailed off. "Speak, technician." "It appears to be a substance they call caffeine. They consume it willingly, regularly. It is a mild toxin that increases alertness and suppresses fatigue." Oris blinked all 4 eyes. "They poison themselves?" On purpose? Yes, Commander. They do it every day. They seem to enjoy it. A heavy silence fell over the bridge. The crew of the Silent Observer looked at each other. They had studied many species. They had seen strange customs and unusual biologies. But this was different. This was a species that had evolved on a death world, that breathed fire gas, that healed from fatal wounds, that drugged themselves for pleasure, and that named their ships cannot be defeated. Commander, Brel said, his voice barely a whisper, what do we do? Oris straightened her back. She was a commander of the Velthy fleet. She did not show fear. She did not show doubt. But deep inside, in a place she would never admit existed, she felt cold. We continue observing, she said, and we wait for Admiral Kova. This decision is above my authority. She turned and walked to her command chair. As she sat down, she looked at the human ship one more time. Such a small vessel, such a small crew, but the data suggested something that Commander Oris did not want to believe. These creatures were not prey. They were not even normal predators. They were something else entirely, something the galaxy had never seen before. And they were just sitting there, waiting, perfectly calm, as if they had already decided how this meeting would end. That calmness, more than anything else, terrified Commander Oris. Chief Engineer Minho Beck had been in the Space Force for 25 years. He had gray in his beard and scars on his hands from decades of working with machines. He loved the Indomitable like it was his child. Every pipe, every wire, every bolt was familiar to him. He stood in the engine room, watching the power readings on his screen. Everything was normal. Everything was perfect. But he knew that something was happening above him, on the bridge. He could feel it in the slight vibration of the deck. The crew was nervous. Nervous people made small movements, shifted their weight, tapped their feet. The ship felt all of it. His communication device buzzed. Engineering, this is the bridge. Beck here. Chief, keep everything ready. We may need full power soon. The Indomitable is always ready, Captain. You just give the word. In the weapons control room, Officer Jisoo No sat at her station. She was 35 years old, with short black hair and steady hands. She had received medals for combat. She did not like to talk about them. The memories were not pleasant. Her screens showed the alien vessel. It was larger than the Indomitable, sleek and silver. It looked elegant, advanced, but No had learned long ago that appearance meant nothing. What mattered was what a ship could do when the shooting started. She checked her weapons. All systems green. Missiles armed and ready. Railguns powered up but on standby. Point defense systems active. The Indomitable was a small ship, but it carried enough firepower to destroy a small moon. No hope she would not have to use any of it today. On the Silent Observer, Commander Oris had ordered a full weapons analysis. She needed to know what the human ship could do. Biology was important, but weapons would decide any battle. Technician Brel worked his controls carefully. The scan took time, because the human ship was heavily armored. The metals in its hull made readings difficult. But slowly, the picture became clear. Commander, Brel said, the weapons scan is complete. Report. Brel took a deep breath. The primary weapons are kinetic projectile launchers. Kinetic? They use physical projectiles? Yes, Commander. They launch solid metal objects at extremely high velocities. The weapons are called railguns. They use magnetic fields to accelerate projectiles to speeds that are difficult to believe. How fast? Brel checked his data. Based on the weapon design, the projectiles travel at approximately 3% of light speed. Oris felt her stomach tighten. At that speed, even a small piece of metal could punch through any armor. The Velthy used energy weapons, lasers and plasma cannons. These were considered advanced, clean, elegant, very fast rocks. It was primitive in concept, but devastating in practice. What else? Oris asked. Secondary weapons include missiles. The missiles are not ordinary, Commander. They contain guidance systems that allow them to change direction, follow targets, and avoid obstacles. Hunter missiles, Oris whispered. The Velthi had banned such weapons long ago. They considered it immoral to create weapons that pursued their targets like predators. The humans apparently had no such concerns. The warheads are varied, Brel continued. Some are explosive. Some are designed to create fragments that spread over a wide area. And some are, he paused, continue. Some are nuclear, Commander. The bridge went completely silent. Nuclear weapons. The Velthi had abandoned nuclear technology centuries ago because it was too dangerous. The radiation, the destruction, the long-term damage to space and planets made nuclear weapons unthinkable. The humans carried them on a patrol ship. How many nuclear warheads? Oris asked. 12, Commander. 12. A single nuclear warhead could destroy a Velthi cruiser. 12 could devastate a small fleet. And this was just a patrol ship. A small ship sent to explore and watch. There is more, Brel said. His voice had become flat, as if he had stopped feeling the shock and was simply reporting facts. The ship has extensive point defense systems, rapid-fire weapons designed to create a barrier of metal in front of the ship. Any missile or fighter approaching would have to pass through thousands of projectiles per second. They expect to be attacked, Oris said. They built their ship to survive attacks from all directions. Yes, Commander. The design suggests they have fought many battles. The armor shows repair marks. Old damage that has been fixed. This ship has seen combat before. Oris turned to look at the human vessel on the main screen. Such a small ship. Such a deadly ship. Brel, she said slowly, what kind of enemies did these creatures evolve to fight? The young technician had no answer. On the Indomitable, Captain Wu Jin called a meeting in the small conference room. Lieutenant Park, Officer No, Dr. Kim, Engineer Beck, and Ensign Day all gathered around the table. Status report, Wu Jin said. They are still scanning us, Park reported. They have completed biological and weapons analysis. Now they appear to be searching our communication signals. They will find our historical records, Wu Jin said. Our entertainment, our news, our everything. Is that wise, Captain? Dr. Kim asked. Our history is not always pleasant. Our history is honest, Wu Jin replied. Let them understand what we are capable of. Officer No spoke up. Captain, I have armed all weapons but kept them on standby. If they attack, we can respond in less than 3 seconds. Good. But we do not fire first, understood? We defend only. Understood, sir. Engineer Beck crossed his arms. Captain, I have a question. Why are we not running? That alien ship is bigger than us. If they have friends nearby, we could be in serious trouble. Wu Jin smiled slightly. Chief, do you know why I named this ship Indomitable? No, sir. Because humans do not run. We have been pushed down many times in our history. We have been hurt, broken, nearly destroyed. But we always stand back up. That is what makes us who we are. He looked around the table at his crew. Young Day, nervous but brave. Steady No, ready for anything. Wise Kim, caring for them all. Gruff Beck, loyal to the bone. Sharp Park, always thinking 3 steps ahead. If we run now, Wu Jin continued, they will think we are weak. They will think all humans are weak. But if we stand here, calm and ready, they will see the truth. They will see that we are not afraid of them. And if they attack? Park asked. Then we show them what the word indomitable means. On the silent observer, Commander Oris received a new message. The text appeared on her screen. Fleet arriving. Admiral Kova en route. Oris felt relief wash over her. Soon she would not have to make these decisions alone. The Admiral would know what to do. The Admiral had fought many battles. But as she looked at the human ship, still floating calmly in space, still waiting without fear, Oris wondered something. The humans had clearly fought many battles too, and they were still here. What did that say about all the enemies they had faced before? The answer, Oris realized, was simple and terrible. Those enemies were gone, and the humans were still here. The Velthi flagship dropped out of faster-than-light travel with a flash of blue light. It was called the Dominion of Stars, and it was massive. Behind it came 39 more ships, forming a wall of silver metal against the darkness of space. Admiral Kova stood on the bridge of the flagship. She was old, even for a Velthi, with pale gray skin and eyes that had seen 1,000 battles. She had never lost, not once in her entire career. She did not intend to start now. "Show me this ship that has frightened my best commander," Kova ordered. The screen displayed the Indomitable. It looked tiny compared to the Velthi fleet, a single small vessel facing 40 warships. Kova almost laughed. "This?" she said. "This little thing? Oris, explain yourself." Commander Oris appeared on a secondary screen, transmitting from the silent observer. "Admiral, I recommend caution. The biological and weapons data is unlike anything we have seen. These creatures are dangerous," Kova said flatly. "One ship," Kova said flatly, "against my fleet. What can they do?" "With respect, Admiral, I believe we should study them more before taking action." Kova waved her hand dismissively. "Very well, continue your scans, but I want a full intelligence report within the hour. Then we will decide what to do with these humans." Historian Veth was a quiet Velthi who spent her life studying alien cultures. She had joined the fleet to document first contacts, not to fight. Now she sat in her small office aboard the Dominion of Stars, reading through intercepted human transmissions. The humans broadcasted constantly. Entertainment, news, music, historical records, everything. They seemed to have no concept of information security. Or perhaps they simply did not care who saw their data. That started with the historical records. What she found made her stop breathing. War. Endless war. The humans had been fighting each other since before they learned to write. They fought over land. They fought over resources. They fought over ideas. They fought over religion. They fought over nothing at all, simply because they could not stop fighting. She found records of something called the First World War. Millions of humans had died. Cities burned. Entire generations were destroyed. Veth expected the humans to collapse after such devastation. They did not collapse. Instead, 20 years later, they fought again. The Second World War was even worse. Tens of millions died. Nuclear weapons were used for the first time. 2 entire cities were erased in seconds. And still, the humans did not stop. Veth found records of smaller wars that followed. Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf, Afghanistan, Syria. The list continued without end. Even when they reached the stars, they brought their wars with them. But the most terrifying part was not the violence. It was what happened after. Every time the humans were knocked down, they stood back up. Every time their cities burned, they rebuilt them bigger and stronger. Every time they lost millions of people, they had more children. They adapted. They learned. They improved. Their weapons evolved at an impossible rate. Stone tools became bronze swords, became iron axes, became gunpowder, became machine guns, became nuclear bombs, became weapons that Veth did not even understand. All in a few thousand years. The Velthi had taken 50,000 years to develop faster-than-light travel. The humans had done it in less than 500 years after their first airplane flight. They were not just survivors. They were something more dangerous. They were fast. Veth brought her findings to Admiral Kova. The old admiral read the report in silence. Her face showed no emotion, but her hands gripped the edges of her datapad tightly. "These images," Kova said quietly, What are they? Veth leaned over to look. The screen showed old photographs from human wars. Soldiers standing in muddy trenches, wounded men carrying wounded friends, cities reduced to rubble. And everywhere the same look in human eyes. It was not defeat. It was not surrender. It was patience. It was waiting. It was the quiet promise that said, "You have hurt us. We will remember. And one day we will hurt you back." "This is what they are," Veth said softly. "This is their nature. They do not stop. They do not give up. They simply wait until they are ready, and then they strike." Kova set down the datapad. For the first time in many years, she felt something cold in her chest. But something close. "If we attack them," she asked, "what will happen?" "Based on their history," Veth thought carefully, "they will fight. Some will die. But those who survive will go home and tell others what happened. They will build more ships, bigger ships, better weapons, and they will come looking for us." "How long?" "Based on their technological development rate, perhaps 50 years, perhaps less." 50 years. For the Velthi, 50 years was nothing. Many Velthi lived for 300 years. In 50 years, a Velthi might barely change careers. But in 50 years, the humans would build a fleet that could destroy the Velthi dominion completely. On the Indomitable, Captain Wujin received a message from Earth Command. Reinforcements were 12 hours away. He was ordered to either hold position or retreat at his own judgment. He called his crew together again. "Command has given us a choice," he said. "We can wait for help, or we can leave now. I want your opinions." Lieutenant Park spoke first. "How many ships do they have now?" 40 confirmed. 40 against 1. Park smiled grimly. "I have seen worse odds in video games. We hold." Officer No nodded. "We hold. If we run, they will follow. Better to face them here." Engineer Bake shrugged. "The Indomitable is ready for anything. We hold." Dr. Kim looked uncertain, but she straightened her back. "Our duty is to stand for Earth. We hold." Everyone looked at Ensign Day. He was the youngest, the least experienced. His hands were shaking slightly. "Day," Wujin said gently, "your opinion matters too." Day swallowed hard. He thought about his family back home, his parents, his little sister. He thought about what they would say if they knew he was facing 40 alien warships. They would tell him to do his duty. "We hold, sir." His voice shook, but the words were clear. Wu Jin nodded slowly. He felt pride in his chest. This was humanity at its finest. Not arrogance, not foolishness, just quiet determination. The same determination that had carried humans through ice ages, plagues, wars, and every other disaster in their history. "Then we hold," he confirmed. "Power up all systems, raise shields, and someone make fresh coffee. It might be a long night." On the Dominion of Stars, Admiral Kova watched the human ship closely. It had not moved. It had not powered up weapons. It was just sitting there, waiting, exactly as it had been since the beginning. She understood now why Oris was frightened. It was not the weapons. It was not the biology. It was the stillness. 40 Velthi warships surrounded one human vessel, and the humans were not running. They were not begging. They were not even threatening. They were simply waiting to see what would happen next. And in that waiting, in that absolute calm, Admiral Kova saw the shadow of every enemy the humans had ever faced and defeated. She saw the shadow of her own civilization. Admiral Kova stood before the communication screen. Behind her, the bridge crew of the Dominion of Stars watched in silence. 40 Velthi warships hung in space, their weapons ready, their crews waiting for orders. "Open a channel to the human vessel," Kova commanded. "Channel open, Admiral." Kova straightened her uniform. She had done this many times before. She had demanded surrender from dozens of species. Most had obeyed. Those who did not were now memories, their planets quiet and empty. "Human vessel," Kova said, her voice hard and cold. "This is Admiral Kova of the Velthi Dominion. You are surrounded. Identify yourselves and prepare for inspection. Refuse, and you will be destroyed." She waited. On the Indomitable, Captain Wu Jin heard the message. His crew looked at him, waiting for guidance. Ensign Day's hands trembled over his controls. Lieutenant Park's jaw was tight with tension. Officer No's fingers rested near the weapons panel. Wu Jin stood up slowly. He adjusted his uniform. He ran a hand through his graying hair. Then he pressed the communication button. "This is Captain Tae Wu Jin of the Republic of Korea Space Force vessel Indomitable. We are from Earth in the Sol system. Our mission is patrol and exploration." He paused. When he spoke again, his voice was calm, almost gentle. "We do not seek conflict, Admiral, but we are prepared for it." The words hung in the air between the two fleets. Simple words, quiet words, but every being who heard them understood their meaning. "We will not beg, we will not run. Do what you must, so will we." Admiral Kova felt a chill run down her spine. She had heard surrender before. She had heard defiance before. But this was neither. This was something else. This was certainty. "Historian Veth," Kova said without turning around, "come to the bridge, now." Veth arrived moments later, carrying her datapad. She had been expecting this call. She had one final piece of information to share. "Admiral," Veth said, "there is a human concept you need to understand. They call it mutually assured destruction." Kova frowned. "Explain." "During their history," Veth continued, "humans developed weapons so powerful that any attack would result in total destruction for both sides. They called these weapons nuclear missiles. They pointed these weapons at each other for decades." "At each other? Their own species?" "Yes. Different nations, different governments. They lived under the constant threat of complete annihilation. Every day, they woke up knowing that their entire civilization could end in fire, and they lived with this knowledge for generations." Kova stared at Veth. "That is madness." "We would call it madness," Veth agreed, "but the humans called it peace. No one attacked, because everyone would die if they did. Fear became their protector. Destruction became their shield." The bridge was completely silent. Every Velthi present was thinking the same thing. What kind of species could live like that? What kind of minds could accept such a terrible bargain? Only the strongest minds. Only the most determined. Only those who would rather die than surrender. "Admiral," Commander Oris spoke from her screen, "I believe I understand now. If we destroy their ship, they will not simply accept it. They will see it as an attack on their entire species, and they will respond." "How can you be sure?" "Because that is what they have always done. Every time someone attacked them, they fought back. Every time, without exception. It is not strategy for them, Admiral. It is instinct." Kova looked at the human ship on her screen. So small, so fragile. But inside that small ship were creatures who had lived with the shadow of total destruction hanging over them their entire history. They had not collapsed under that weight. They had grown stronger. "If we attack them," Kova said slowly, "they will come for us." "Not today," Veth confirmed. "Not tomorrow. But they will build fleets, they will cross the void between stars. And based on their history, they will not stop until our civilization is a warning for others." "How do you know?" Veth looked at her datapad. "Because that is what they have always done. They remember their enemies. They remember for centuries, and when they are ready, they strike." Kova closed her eyes. For a long moment, She stood perfectly still. The fate of two civilizations rested on her next words. She thought about the Velthy way. Attack first. Eliminate threats before they grow. It had worked for thousands of years. But the humans were different. The humans could not be eliminated quickly. They healed from wounds, they adapted to challenges, they built weapons at impossible speed. And most importantly, they did not forget. If the Velthy attacked now, they might destroy this one ship, perhaps even a few more. But the humans would survive. They would learn, they would prepare. And one day, the Velthy would wake up to find human fleets filling their skies. Kova opened her eyes. "Stand down weapons," she ordered. The bridge crew hesitated. "Admiral?" one officer asked. "I said stand down. All ships, now." One by one the Velthy warships powered down their weapons. The threat displays dimmed. The killing machines went quiet. Kova pressed the communication button. "Human vessel, Captain Wu Jin, the Velthy Dominion, requests formal diplomatic contact." On the Indomitable, the crew held their breath. Wu Jin read the message twice to make sure he understood. Then he smiled. "We accept," he said. Lieutenant Park let out a breath she did not know she was holding. Officer No's hands relaxed. Engineer Bake laughed quietly to himself. Dr. Kim wiped tears from her eyes, and Ensign Day simply sat at his station, shaking, unable to believe they were still alive. "Captain," Park said, "what just happened?" Wu Jin looked out the window at the alien fleet. 40 ships, any one of which could have destroyed the Indomitable in seconds. Now they floated peacefully, weapons dark, waiting for diplomats instead of warriors. "They learned something about us," Wu Jin said quietly. "Something important." "What?" "That we are more dangerous as enemies than we are valuable as conquests. That the cost of fighting us would be greater than the cost of knowing us." He turned to face his crew. These brave people who had stood with him against impossible odds. These humans who had refused to run. "We taught them to fear us," Wu Jin said, "and that fear taught them to respect us." 3 months later, the first Velthy ambassador arrived on Earth. Her name was Tira. She was nervous, even though she tried to hide it. She had read all the reports. She knew what humans were capable of. The welcoming ceremony was simple. Speeches, music, gifts exchanged between cultures. The humans smiled and laughed and shook hands with their strange 5-fingered grips. Ambassador Tira stood before a human diplomat, a tall woman with kind eyes and gray hair. The human extended her hand in greeting. Tira hesitated. She looked at that hand. She had read about what human hands had done throughout history, the wars they had fought, the weapons they had built, the enemies they had destroyed. And yet here was that same hand, offered in friendship. Tira took it. The human's grip was warm and firm, not threatening, not weak, just present, just real. "Welcome to Earth," the human said with a smile. "We are glad you are here." And Tira believed her, because the humans had taught the galaxy something important, something that Admiral Kova now understood, something that would change the future of both their peoples. The most terrifying thing in the universe was not a species that destroyed its enemies. It was a species that survived itself, and still had room in its heart for friendship.